Hi and welcome to Conversations with Dr. Manan Gandhi. I am Dr. Manan Gandhi, and today we're going to be talking on various subjects that I have in mind. So let's just wait for a few people to join in and then we'll start. Hi Kunjan, hi Manjuji, hi Manojji, hi Sita. Welcome to all of you all. Just waiting for a few others to join before we can start. Hi Kunjan, just waiting for a few more to join. Hi Chavi, hello Saurabh. Right, so I think at the end of this session today, I'm going to be announcing the link, which I will obviously share on my Insta page, as well as on other platforms, where I'm going to be sharing the link, which is for the workshop. I am going to start the workshop from next Sunday onwards, so it will be a 1 hour workshop, which is going to be done on alternate Sundays. The total workshop normally takes about 6 to 8 hours. So it's not going to be a small one. It's in fact going to be a pretty long, a very detailed workshop that I will do. And we'll start on the 6th and then we'll see how things go, how many people join, how the whole thing is. But I will conduct the workshop. I'm expecting at least about 30 odd people, bare minimum. Hi Parnita. Hi Pallavi, hi Sony. Right, so I think about 2 to 3 more minutes. Let me just wait for more people to join in. And hi Sarab. And once people start coming in, we'll start. I think there are a few topics that are there in my mind that I think we could talk about today. Probably a lot of things that you all didn't know existed. Maybe I'll answer a few questions. Yeah, in fact, even I'm pretty excited for the workshop. I think I'll have to share a PowerPoint presentation with you all. Hello, Sarab. So we will probably do it on GeoMeet. I think better to use an Indian app than some American or Chinese apps. Yes, hello Pallavi. Right, so I think let's just start the talk for today. We have quite a few people who've come in, and I'm pretty sure many more are going to come in. But let's just start for now. There were a couple of things that I think I wanted to talk about today, but just for the sake of people not missing out and for the people who are yet to join in, because I'm getting a few WhatsApp messages asking me whether I've already started. So I think a few people are joining me. Till that time, let me just do one thing. Let me just answer a few questions so that we can get the session underway, and then I can start introducing the topic that I have thought of talking on today. Right. So if you all have any questions, please do type them down. I'll answer a couple of questions now, and then we'll again answer a couple of questions, maybe in the middle for a break, or maybe at the end of the session. But I'll probably try to make sure that I answer all the questions that are given to me. Hi Shreyas, welcome. Right, so any questions regarding any health concerns, any disease, any medicines, any diet, anything that you all want to ask me, just put it into the chat, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. Again, for the people who've come in a little bit late, I'm going to be announcing my workshop at the end of the meeting, and I'll also get a link and probably post it by the end of the day on my Insta, which you can then register and join in. I'll probably do it on GeoMeet, because I think they have an unlimited time slot, so we can do it for about an hour or so every alternate Sunday. The next Sunday I'll come on Insta Live, and the other Sunday I'll come on my workshop. So then we can do both of them simultaneously. and I don't miss out on the Insta Live because everyone may not be interested in the workshop. Again, people, you can just ask me questions and I'll be glad to answer the questions. Okay, so I mean, till the questions come in, let me start one of the topics that I think I should talk about today, and that topic is something that is very close to my heart for the simple fact that we are actually doing it in our house and we've been doing it for a while. So that's it's called Suvarna Prashan. I don't know whether you all have heard of it. Probably you have, probably you haven't. Doesn't matter. Suvarna Prashan is one of the things that that basically keeps Ayurveda on a much higher pedestal than many other medicinal pathies or treatments that are present, because Ayurveda, the focus is more on promotive and preventive treatment rather than mere curative ones. So what I'm trying to say here is that in Ayurveda, if a healthy person goes to an Ayurvedic doctor and says, listen, I'm healthy, I have nothing wrong with me, what do I do? We have multiple things that you can do to improve and promote your health, not just your physical, not just your mental, but even your spiritual health to a great level. Whereas if you go to another pathy, they are more focused on curing diseases and illnesses, so that when you are actually healthy and you go to a doctor saying, listen, I have no problem, I've come to you, now do something for me, he has nothing. They'll probably say, you know what, maybe your vitamin is low, but even if that is okay, you're done. They'll just send you home. Whereas in Ayurveda, we really have a big emphasis, in fact a greater emphasis, on prevention, on immunity building, and on promotion of health rather than merely just curing diseases, right? And for that, there are multiple medicines. I think you've heard of Chawanprash, or you've heard of maybe Brahma Rasayan, you've heard of Vajikaran, you've heard of multiple other things similar. But there's also one thing that you may or may not have heard of, which is Suvarna Prashan. You had recommended Swadhishthan, I think Swadhishtha Virechan, Churna for Pitta people with constipation. But you've written Swadhishthan, but I think you mean Swadhishtha Virechan, contains Sena leaves. Correct. Long use of Sena leads to ulcers. So can Swadhishtha Virechan be used daily? First of all, Sena leaves does not cause ulcers. What I mean by that is that Swadhishtha Virechan contains Sena leaves, but it contains many other products along with it. Okay, so for example, if I were to explain it in this way, you have haldi and milk, right? You have this golden milk concept going on everywhere in the West, which is haldi with milk, and that's been going on in India for years now. Haldi, when taken solely, increases the heat in the body, whereas milk, when taken solely, cools the body down. Haldi has a lot of properties. It cleans the blood up. It's very good for the skin. It's very good as an antiseptic or as an antibiotic to a small extent, but it works very well in those kind of areas. But it has a very big negative property that it's very heaty on the body. So when you mix the haldi with the milk, by the mere act of mixing it with milk, the milk cools the heat property of haldi down. So now we are getting all the good parts of haldi, all the good parts of milk, but that combination is neither heaty nor cold. So you are leaving out the negative aspect of the haldi while taking all the positive ones in it, and that's how combinations are made. Similarly, with Swadhishtha Virechan, what is happening is you're leaving out the negative parts of the Sena leaves, right? Because you're mixing it with a lot of other things, especially mishri, which is sugar, right? And when you're taking Swadhishtha Virechan as it is, it does not cause ulcers. So Sena leaves may cause ulcers, I agree, but Swadhishtha Virechan will not cause ulcers, simply because it's not purely Sena leaves. It's a combination, and combinations are made with a lot of intelligence and with a lot of research behind it. Okay, this is for my mom who is 51 years old. Can she take Arjun Chal Kadha instead of tea? Arjun Chal Kadha is great for the heart. So anyone who's suffering from any sort of heart disease, you can blindly take Arjun Chal Kadha as instead of tea. But there are certain rules, and these rules are very, very important. Anyone who takes Arjun Chal Kadha, after taking the Kadha, for at least 45 minutes, ideally 1.5 hours, you are absolutely disallowed to drink water. If by any means you drink water after having Arjun Chal Kada, that's going to be a big problem. So you need to stop that immediately. Right? Diet for IBS. IBS is what we call as Pravahika in Ayurveda. Right? IBS in fact is pretty broad in allopathy. Ayurveda goes into much more specifics and diagnosis the IBS in many different ways. So there's no one particular diet in IBS, but what you normally prescribe for IBS is a diet that is easy on the stomach while helping you clear your motions as well. In IBS, what generally happens is that a lot of mucus comes out and not a lot of stool comes out. So you do go to the washrooms pretty often. Semi-solid mucoid stools do come out, but your stools are still not clear. So despite a patient coming in with the complaint of I have to go to the bathroom 3 or 4 or 5 times in the morning, before that I can't really do anything, I would normally still give something to clear the motions up, because the motions aren't really getting cleared in IBS. The mucus is getting cleared, and that's actually dangerous because it can lead to ulcers. The mucus's job is to prevent the intestines from getting the ulcers. Is Shilajit good for health? Does it cause heat in the body? Shilajit does cause heat in the body to a small extent. There's no such thing as good for health or not. Shilajit's qualities is that it's very good in terms of it increases the potency of a person. It increases the sexual vigor in a person. It increases the muscle quality in a person. So if a person is feeling weak or is debilitated, and especially a male, because it really helps in a male body, it really increases the power and the energy levels as well, right? So that these are the benefits for Shilajit. But again, it does increase the heat to a small extent. Okay, coming to the, I think I've done with my questions for now. You all can keep asking me questions for sure, and I'll try to keep answering all of them on the way. But today there was something that I wanted to talk about, and that was Suvarna Prashan. We started on it, and then I stopped because I was waiting for more people to join, but I have quite a few people right now. So a few things that I think I should talk about right now in terms of Suvarna Prashan before we go into that particular medicine is, number one, the focus of Ayurveda on prevention and promotion of health. Right? That's something we spoke about already. For people who've just joined, you all can refer to it. I'm going to be uploading the video again on my YouTube channel, my Facebook page, as well as my IGTV. So how is Suvarna Prashan made? Who is it for? What are the benefits and how should we use it? I'll answer all of these questions in this order. Suvarna Prashan is a medicine that is meant for children. And by children, I mean really young children. Children at the age of neonate to toddler, which means that from the day the child is born till the child is of 5 years old. In that age group, from day 1 to 5 years, is where we give Suvarna Prashan to the child. And this is something that we've been giving to almost everyone. In fact, even in the family, we've been giving it to the kids. Suvarna Prashan, how does it help? It increases the immunity of the child. And more than that, because there are quite a few things that probably help in increasing the immunity of a newborn and of a child. But the most important part of Suvarna Prashan is that it increases the brain development. Now, for a child and for a parent, that is absolutely essential, because the brain development of a child occurs only till the age of 5. After that, all you can do is train the child. You can't really develop the brain to a great extent. So all the development that can take place potentially is between the day 1 from which the child is born until she's 5 years old. Right? So if there's something that works brilliantly in developing the brain of the child, that is Suvarna Prashan. Right? Suvarna Bhasma is known as Medhya. Medhya means it's something that increases the mental faculty of the child. It increases not just the memory but also the processing power. So what you're doing is you're not just increasing the immunity of the child, you're also increasing the brain power of the child. And that to me is absolutely essential. So now this is what Suvarna Prashan does. Now what a lot of people are very skeptical giving something to a child, because they feel a child is very, very vulnerable. You need to be 10 times sure before you could give it to a child. Had it been an adult, you would have been giving it pretty easily. So Suvarna Prashan is something that has actually been used for decades. In fact, it was used earlier for the Rajas, Maharajas, because it's gold, right? So it's pretty expensive. And Rajas, Maharajas used to give it to their princes, to their children. The noble families used to give it to their children. It's in fact used, I think, even in the Jewish culture, they use Garbha Sanskar. They give something similar to Suvarna Prashan. In fact, a lot of people today, probably even your family, does this, but they do it in a very crude way. Sona घिस के they lick it on the tongue, चटाते हैं. कभी कभी they use that सोने का पत्र in the milk and they boil the milk with the सोने का पत्ता, and then they give that milk, सोने वाला milk, to the child. And there are various other ways to give it. But what I find is that these crude methods no longer are much more effective than doing nothing, but they're not really as effective as giving a proper medicine made out of proper Suvarna Bhasma. And that is Suvarna Prashan. It's Government of India recommended, Ayush Ministry recommended. It's given in the government Ayurvedic hospitals, including, if people in Bombay there's a R.A. Podar hospital in Worli, where they give it to the child as well. And a lot of clinics, a lot of Ayurveda practitioners do practice it. But what they do here is that they only give it once in a month in Pushya Nakshatra. Obviously, a lot of Ayurvedic doctors understand that people are not able to afford an expensive medicine like Suvarna Prashan, which has gold in it. So what they do is that they've made this, in fact the entire Ayurveda lobby, to be very honest, has made this really nice, doable schedule, wherein one day of the month, wherein there is something called as a Pushya Nakshatra, which is a great nakshatra to give medicines to a child. They give Suvarna Prashan drops to children and hold camps. So they charge anywhere between 250 rupees, and they give about 3 to 6 drops to the child every month. Ideally, for people who can afford it, and I'm sure a lot of you all can, it should be given on a daily basis to a child between day 1 to day 5 for the entirety of his 5 years. If you can manage to do that, in Ayurveda it's said that the child becomes extremely intelligent. The memory power is so sharp, and I have not obviously had a test of this, is that if he reads or sees something once, he'll never forget it throughout life. So an eidetic memory is what it's called. So these are the benefits of Suvarna Prashan. A lot of times when I interact with mothers who've probably come to me for some other issue altogether, and I sometimes mention that, if your child is a year old or is 2 years old, have you given him or her Suvarna Prashan? They actually have a puzzled face because they don't know what it is. So I really thought I'd probably take the opportunity of having this Insta Live to maybe spend about 15 to 20 minutes talking about this, because a lot of people do want to do something about it, and because of their ignorance and lack of knowledge of something of this, even existing, they're not able to do it. And then they repent after the child is 5, 6, 7 years old. They come to me asking me, listen, is there something I can do right now? And all I can tell them is, sorry, you really can't do much. The brain development of the child is up till 5. After that, you really can't do much. Okay? So, yeah, this was one of the topics that I wanted to talk about today. If there's any question regarding Suvarna Prashan, please ask me. I really trying to answer all the questions today. I have a question from Chavi saying, hi doctor, my mother has a sinus problem which gets aggravated during this season. What should she do? Also, she is complaining of a lower back pain. So there are two kinds of problems. Normally we assume that a sinus problem happens due to an increased amount of cold environment that's surrounding us. So in the winters, okay, maybe due to the cold weather in the monsoon. But what I've found, and what even if you think about it, you will find, is that sinus really in Bombay does not occur due to temperature as much as it occurs due to humidity. When there is a high amount of humidity, you find that because the entire air that's surrounding you is completely saturated, your sinuses and allergies, not just rhinitis, sinusitis, different kind of even asthmatic kind of allergies, respiratory allergies, you might have this severe headache, a catching pain in these areas, maybe behind the ears, you probably have a ear block. You might have a swelling, where you find this gum pain. That's because of the cold. All of this actually comes up due to humidity. In a lot of countries, when humidity crosses about 50%, they start buying dehumidifiers. The function of a dehumidifier is very simple. It removes the moisture from the air, making the air that you breathe much more easier to take in and to go out without having the heaviness of so much vapor in it, right? So in this season, in the monsoons, in any which case the Bombay humidity is above 80%. So in the monsoons, what happens here is that the humidity really shoots up. It's normally about 80-84% in Bombay, but in this season it really goes up to 94-95, which is extremely high, and it's very, very difficult for a lot of people to breathe well. And that's when the sinuses start flaring up, because when there's so much humidity, the body starts making mucus because there's a difficulty to breathe. So the body assumes that because of the difficulty to breathe, there is something that is causing a blockage in your nose passage. So the body starts making mucus to grab onto those particles that are causing the blockage. And because of excessive mucus production, the sinuses get swollen up because they have a limited volume. And where there's a lot of mucus production in a small volume, it gets swollen up. And when it gets swollen up, it becomes tender, it pains. You probably have a lot of sneezing in the morning for the body to try and remove those particles. But as long as that humidity stays there to a great extent, it's going to be a problem. Now, a lot of people, what they do is that they do a lot of steaming here. And when they do a lot of steaming, they feel relieved because the heat is actually melting down the mucus in the sinuses. But what you're really doing is you're actually increasing the humidity in the sinuses by giving water vapor in the sinuses. So after the heat settles down and everything becomes okay, it becomes normal body temperature, that water vapor that you've actually filled your sinuses with will cause more mucus, and the cycle repeats itself. So for the people who steam in a cold or in a sinus problem, you're just worsening the condition for a temporary relief. So stop doing that. Okay, so I have a few questions from Rekha ji. She says that I've recently developed a dad on my leg, which is not exactly a ringworm. What should I apply on it? I don't know what the diagnosis is. If it's not a ringworm, then probably look into it. Maybe it's a fungal infection. The funny thing about an infection, and something that I think a lot of people should know, because the subject of infection has come up here, is that a lot of you, in fact I think all of you that are listening to this, or probably will listen to this when I upload it on my channels, think that infection is something that comes from outside, enters into our body due to sheer bad luck. We contract it, and because people come and tell me, oh, I'm so sorry you got an infection, that's really bad luck on your end, and we contract it and we think that because of whatever has come out from outside, we've gotten this problem, and if we kill that bacteria and virus, somehow the problem disappears. This is what is taught to you. This is what you think. I'm not blaming you for it. What I'm trying to tell you is that now let's think from an Ayurvedic perspective. When you actually take the genome of the human body, and by genome I mean the summations of the genes that are present in the human body, you will find our genome is closer to a bacteria than it is to a human gene. The reason being is that there are much more bacteria genes in the body than human body genes. Now that's confusing. It's interesting as well. All the infections that you can think of, almost every single one of them, is present in the human body. Even the E. coli, which is so harmful, and that's why we have aqua guards and this and that. The E. coli that we try to burn is already present inside. We already have all the infections inside, but these infections don't come up. The bacteria are very peaceful. They are like the Maoists who don't really bother the Indian state currently. The problem is that when we provide a substrate, on that substrate, these infections suddenly trigger and start showing up. Now let me make that a little bit more simpler for you. Every one of you all has methi dana in your kitchen, Correct? Now, when you keep it in your kitchen in that masale ka dabba, does that methi dana start making trees inside your kitchen? It doesn't. Does it mean it doesn't have the potential to make a methi tree? It may. Obviously it does. Right? But it doesn't start growing into a tree unless you give it a substrate or a soil which is fertile. The minute that same methi dana which has been lying there for a year now is planted into a substrate or into a soil, does the entire methi, the plant sprouts. Similarly, when the vata, pitta and kapha balance goes away, and when ama or indigestion or toxins starts accumulating in the body, those toxins are the soil wherein the methi or the infection starts multiplying and now sprouts into a plant. So what do? We think that infection has come from some X, Y and Z place to us, which may be or may not be true. I'm not going on to that. But if we keep our Vat, Pitta and Kapha in balance, the chances of us contracting that infection is extremely minor. For example, if a dengue mosquito bites 20-30 people, but yet 2 of them get dengue and 18 of them don't. And that's true. In fact, you can see it in COVID. You think only the people who've tested positive have COVID. A lot of people have COVID. They don't even know they have COVID. They're completely asymptomatic. Why do these people not suffer despite being so-called infected? Because the substrate isn't really there. They have the infection, but it's not bothering them. They don't have the arm. They don't have the toxins. They don't have the substrate. And that is real immunity. To keep your body healthy. I've already had a conversation on immunity. I think that was my first Insta live. So you all can refer to it. So again, if you have the dad on your leg, what you really need to do is not try to kill that dad, because if you have the substrate, trust me, even a little bit will again form a problem. You'll keep having skin infections. Solve the Vata, Pitta, Kapha problem. If it's a fungal infection, then it's a Kapha problem. Forget killing the fungus. Get your Kapha into balance, the fungus leaves you automatically. So Ayurveda says, stop killing nature. You can't keep autoclaving yourself. You can't keep disinfecting yourself. You can't keep hiding, running and putting your face behind a chemical and trying to run away from nature, because you, like it or not, are a part of nature. Get your system to the level where your body is clean, clear of toxins, not filled with toxins from head to toe, so that even when you live in nature, even when you live as a yogi in a forest without any odomos or anything, you don't get major diseases. You're pretty comfortable and in tune with nature. Build immunity. Don't keep killing the bacteria, viruses, mosquitoes, flies, dogs, cats, monkeys, cows, chickens. Don't keep killing everything around you because they have a bird flu, mad cow disease, COVID, dengue or malaria. Live in tune with nature. Get your body to the level that even if something does come, because you can't keep living in a PPE kit for the life of your life, your body is fit enough for it. Okay, I have another question from Rekha ji. Please let us know about drinking jeera powder in the morning. Or is it really helpful for weight loss? So drinking jeera powder in the morning does get your pitta and the vata under a little bit of check. In fact, it helps in all 3 doshas. It also helps you digest food. So I am absolutely for it. I think it helps. Does it help in weight loss? Maybe a little bit. Not pronounced, but it does help. Yes, for sure. We learned that using moong daily from you. Can we learn more such things that are the best according to Ayurveda and can be used like manda or rice water, kali draksh, etc.? There are a few things, probably a few tips that I can give all of you that you can use daily. Like things that I use, okay, things that happen in my house, maybe that will help you. So what we do use is that the best oil to cook food in, I find, for someone lives in a Bombay tropicalish kind of an area, is the oil should be unrefined. First of all, I'm not a big fan of refined oil, and double refined is even worse. The only reason why I love those oils is because it gives me more patience. Anyways, jokes apart, you should really use unrefined oils. And if you ask me what really is the good oil for you to use, is probably til oil, sesame. Okay, til oil is one of the best oils that you all can use. In Ayurveda, til oil is supposed to be the best oil. Period. Okay, it helps majorly in vata problems, and in fact, it goes to the extent that in Ayurveda, whenever tel is mentioned, it's supposed to be considered it's unrefined til oil. So, by default, Ayurveda wants you to consider that all oils should be unrefined til oils. It's given that much importance, and trust me, after shifting to that oil, I've seen a tremendous change in the family's health, because we've not been using it for, when I was little, I didn't know Ayurveda, so not been using it forever. Then there are other oils that really help. I think there is olive oil that helps, castor oil that helps. It's not that til oil is the only oil that helps. Other oils do help. Olive oil, I think, is very, very expensive for the amount of benefits that it gives, because it's inferior to til oil, and yet it costs like 5 times more. So it's practically just, why would you use it? You know, it's popular because people in Italy and people abroad use it, and we love imports. Like we've already imported yoga, so we love imports. I think we'll import Ayurveda in the future as well. I'll probably dye my hair blonde and maybe get a bleach or something, and then more people will listen to me. Anyways, jokes aside, olive oil does work well. Oh, I think Manju ji's already asked me for olive oil. Great, I was answering it already. Right, so olive oil does work well, but I think til oil is better. Second thing that we've changed in our household is that we used to use these common the Tata Namak, the sea salt wala namak, whichever company that you know, you whichever company that you want to buy it from. But we used to use sea salt, and when we used to use sea salt, after learning Ayurveda, after really getting into it, I really understood that the rock salt that you get, it's called Sendav. I don't know how to explain that to you in English, but it's called Sendav. I think it's also called Sena Namak. It's something that the Hindus use during fast. Okay, if anyone knows, it's rock salt, I think, in English. Okay, but then there's a confusion here as well. A lot of people consider that pink Himalayan salt that is hugely advertised. You have this Puro healthy salt, or you have a lot of companies that sell these pink Himalayan salts that contain some 64 minerals and is tested with high energy levels and used for some crystal healing and things like that. So you have these Himalayan salts, and a lot of people think that it contains minerals, so it's extremely healthy, and it's also marketed and positioned very well in that regards. But let me tell you what Ayurveda thinks about it. If you really desperately are looking for a skin disease, then there are 2 things you should do. Start that Himalayan salt, number 1, and number 2, start having milk and fruit together. If you start doing these 2 things, I'm probably hoping that in a year you will develop a very difficult to cure skin disease. That's how quickly you will get it. I have had multiple patients who were my patients, that cured them for skin diseases a couple of years back, started this Himalayan pink salt, because obviously a few patients that do come to me are very health conscious. So someone sold it to them. I don't blame them. They started the Himalayan salt considering it's great for the health, and they got the skin disease again. Then I had to start their treatment again from scratch. So what I recommend here is start having the common rock salt that is available. I don't know where you buy it from. I don't know where our family buys it from. I think somewhere in Lonavala maybe. But there are multiple places where you do get it. It's called Sendav Namak. If you are still not able to understand, it's what the Hindus used for fasting. Instead of sea salt, at least for people in Bombay, if you start using that rock salt, it reduces the water retention in the body, and it will help you tremendously in almost all water related and salt related aspects, including blood pressure, including thyroid, including diabetes, including obesity, including all these swelling and pain problems that you're suffering from. So yeah, multiple usages. So you could do that. So the first thing I told you is use unrefined til oil. The second thing I told you was to use the common rock salt, not the pink one. Okay. The third thing that I think that will help you out, and I think this is very, very important. Probably, in fact, all of these are important, but this probably tops it. A lot of people generally use these AquaGuard waters. In fact, almost everyone uses these Puro, Kent, RO, and all of these kind of waters, which is basically there are three things here. There is UV light, which kills all the bacteria and viruses supposedly. There is RO, which is reverse osmosis, which basically demineralizes all your water. So it takes all the minerals out and it throws it away. So you're only left with chemical H2O without any of the essential minerals, right? And then there is microfiltration, which basically removes all the harmful bacteria, viruses, but keeps the minerals there. So what normally people buy is something like a UV RO, which means that you've killed all the bacteria, viruses, and then you've removed all the minerals from the water. So you are actually drinking water without the minerals. Then what some of these machines do, which is a little bit high end, they actually remineralize. So they now put in they basically put in chemicals into your water to remineralize the water instead of actually using organic and natural minerals. So what you've been doing for your water is essentially this. You've taken all the good parts out of the water and you've only kept a clean, clear, chemical, distilled, RO'd water. And then you've put in not the natural, the ones that need to be there. You've really put in fake laboratory made chemicals into that water, and then you're drinking it, right? So the original quality of the water is just gone. That's how RO works. But microfiltration, I think that's what it's called, keeps the minerals as it is. So I am really big fan of using machines that are slightly more expensive but are not ROs. They are more of microfiltrations. That I think is always working better. But more than all of this, the point that I was trying to make here is that despite how you get your water and which machine you use for that water, what is extremely important is that after you get the water from that machine, boil it. Boil that water and then drink the water. You don't have to drink it hot. You don't have to immediately boil it and have it. You can boil it, you can store it, you can drink it at room temperature. Doesn't matter. You can make food with the boiled water. You can make whatever tea, sharbats, whatever you have with that boiled water. But by the mere act of boiling water, what you're doing here is that you're actually, by giving Agni Sanskar to the water, you're actually enabling that water to reach deeper areas of the cells, removing the cellular excreta and providing more hydration to the body. Because if the water isn't really boiled, it retains in the body, because as extracellular fluids, it's not so easy for it to penetrate and go as deep as it should go. I'm keeping it in a very non-technical way, so don't hold me for technicalities here. Okay, what I'm trying to do is convey a point. So always have boiled water. Doesn't matter if you get it from a filter. Okay, so for the people who've joined late, number one, unrefined till oil is probably the best one. You could use olive oil, mustard oil, castor oil, other things as substitutes, but they, again, all of them are very heaty, whereas till oil, even though it is heaty, is not as heaty as these, right? So at least people will with the problem will not have a problem with till oils as much as they'd have with, say, a mustard or a castor or an olive oil. Second, salt that you should have should be the rock salt, not the Himalayan salt, not the sea salt, rock salt. The third point, any water that you drink should preferably be boiled water. Okay, even if it comes from a filter when not boiling, just to kill some bacteria and viruses, but you're really changing the properties of the water, making it very easy to digest, to assimilate in the body, and also to excrete out of the body, to clean the kidneys, to remove the uric acid, to remove the creatinine, to remove the negative parts, and to remove all the toxins that are there in the kidneys and are meant for removal via urine. Okay, that also helps in skin diseases. A lot of times, a lot of toxins that are there in the sebaceous and sweat glands, sorry for that, are not very well removed from the body and they stay in the skin, causing skin diseases. I think if you use water in the way I've told you, and if you sweat enough daily, you can actually cure that problem as well. Okay, going on next. This is for my mother. This is by Saurabh. Okay, this is for my mother. Will regular til oil body massage help her for dryness in skin and body and for lower back pain? So for dryness, oil massages definitely help. What you need is lubrication, and oil, ghee, all of these things are definitely lubricating, right? Til oil is also known, and you need to hear this very carefully. Til oil is considered to be the best medicine for a vata based problem. Vayu nasti ruja. Pain does not happen without vata. So if anyone has pain, you can simply have an oil massage, til oil massage, slightly warm it, so it helps a little bit more, and it will reduce pain. So oil massages for reducing pain is very well known. It's very well documented. It's very well researched. The only exception to this is if you have an arm problem, and I've explained arm in the last video. For the people who've not seen the last video, it's on the IGTV, but let me explain it to you in short. For people who have severe indigestion causing the pain, in that particular case, oil massages increase the pain. In every other case, they'll decrease it. Can multiple, okay, this is from Ashwin Agarwal. Can multiple gallstones be removed by Ayurveda? Okay, so I'm currently dealing with a lot of patients, and it's very exhausting but rewarding. Gallstone cases are very exhausting but very rewarding, not in the monetary sense, but in the sense of ethics. Why? Is for the simple reason. 90 to 95% of patients who have gallbladder stones find out that they have gallstones accidentally. I'll repeat, 90 to 95% of patients who have gallstones find out that they have gallstones accidentally. They were doing a sonography for completely something else, and they just so found out that, hold on, I have gallstones. Okay, now if this is for your mom, or oh no, sorry, this is from Ashwin. So Ashwin, I don't know who this is for, but whoever this is for, ask them. I'm pretty sure they found out accidentally doing a sonography for something else. They found out that they have gallstones. Now, people who have gallstones mostly have no problem with the gallstones. They don't have this gallstone typical pain, because that stone pain is really bad. It's almost as bad as a labor pain. Okay, they might have a little bit of gas, a little bit of bloating, and they feel thoda bahut dard hai pet mein, and then they attribute it to the stone, because 1 plus 1, they join the dots and make it 2. But that kind of a gallstone pain is very, very severe, and almost everyone doesn't have it. There are very few people who have it. And for people who don't have it and they accidentally find out, they go to a doctor and they say, listen, I have a gallstone, what do I do? The doctor would more or less tell you that, listen, you need to operate and remove the gallbladder completely. Now, if you do that, and if you do remove the gallbladder, and so I feel a lot of gas and acidity, and I also found it accidentally. That's exactly what I told you, Ashwin. You will find it accidentally. I know this. What happens is that, and you have gas and acidity issue, that's why you went for it. This is exactly what happens to all my patients. Okay, they have gas acidity, and then they do a check, and then they find out gallstones, and they think stone hai to gas acidity hai. Trust me, Ashwin, even if you remove the gallbladder, your gas acidity is staying as it is. Okay, you're just going to be really, really frustrated because you removed it for nothing. In fact, you've worsened your condition. So don't do it. If there is a gallstone plain, if you have an acute abdomen, please go and get an operation done. If you don't, please don't get an operation done. I have people who come and tell me, sir, Ayurveda mein gallstone pigalne ki dawai hai. I'll answer that question. Hai. I have removed gallstones. I have melted gallstones for people. I have reports. And not just anyone. I have done it for one of the biggest builders in the city. I have the reports with me. Everything. And I have done it for multiple other peoples. Okay. What I'm trying to tell you is that just because I have a medicine that can melt the gallstones, even though allopathy assumes that it's impossible to do, I'm sorry, I have reports. If you want, you can go to the pathological center and ask them why they did what they did, because you didn't believe in it. But I have everything in place. But I still don't recommend doing it. Why is that? Because suppose if you have a stone that is lying dormant, it's not bothering you, it's not causing a problem, it's a little bit big. Okay, if I were to start making it mobile and melting it, it could become small, and because it became small, it could now get stuck in that lumen, causing severe problems, and you will have to get admitted and rushed to hospital with an emergency operation. Listen carefully to what I'm saying. You could have to rush into a hospital because you tried to melt the stone and made it smaller, and now it's stuck in the lumen. So what I tell all the patients who come to me for gallstones, don't treat it. From experience. If it's not bothering you, if it's not a problem, don't make it into a problem. Let it be. पड़ा रहेगा, कुछ problem नहीं है. When it gives you a problem, if it gives you a problem, then have a look at it. Very similar to the fan. Is it possible for a fan to fall on the head? Yes, it is. That doesn't mean you operate and remove the fan. When it gives you a problem, or when you can see that, hold on, this is about to fall on me, that's when you remove it. If it's just a stone, it's not giving you any sort of a pain or any kind of a problem, don't bother with it. And that's why I told you it's very rewarding for me to see gallstone patients, because they always end up with a smile on their faces, because no one wants to do an operation and I give them that fodder. Okay, please suggest some authentic ghee brands. I normally really tend not to give brands out, and I would want to continue doing that. I have, and I'm not even kidding, I have at least 20 to 30 brands approaching me monthly and telling me, listen sir, we'll give you this cut, and listen sir, we're really good, we have all these tests in place. I have people messaging me, and out of complete respect to them, I don't promote brands, and I have never kept any of these brands at my clinic. And if any one of you all have been to my clinic, you will know I don't keep these brands or sell these brands for some kind of a margin or some kind of a cut, or promote any of these things, right? I don't believe in stickers. If you think there's a good A2 ghee, go for it. One of the best things for brightening dark circles, hollow below the eyes. See, if you want to remove dark circles, then one thing you need to understand is local treatment really doesn't help. The problem of dark circles is not local, it's systemic. There's some imbalance in the body, and especially a vata based imbalance. Maybe you've not slept well, maybe there's stress, maybe you have stale food, maybe you keep a long gap between meals, maybe it's something else it's probably just something completely else. So you need to figure out what the problem is. A lot of times with females, I do find hormonal issues causing this problem. A lot of times I do find gynecological issues causing this problem, right? So there are multiple reasons why that comes up. So the dark circle and the hollowing below the eyes is a manifestation of a problem. It is not a problem within itself. It can be cured. The minute I understand the problem, I will be able to help you out with this. In fact, you yourself will be able to help yourself out with this. Yes, I feel a lot of gas and acidity issues. I also found it accidentally. Yes, I think we've done this. I have quite a few questions actually. What are your recommendations for dry eyes and pain behind the eyes? Maybe sinuses. Probably increasing because of working in front of the screens for long. Dry eye syndrome is a very, very common eye based. First of all, I don't look at ophthalmological cases too much, but still I do have a fair bit of knowledge about this. Does happen because of an increased screen time. I always recommend for people who are on the screen the whole day. I mean, what I also do myself is there is an option mostly in today's phones and laptops of a blue eye filter, or a blue screen filter, or a blue light filter. I don't know what it's called, or it's probably called a reading mode. I turn that on perpetually. I don't like that blue light to hit my eye. It doesn't make my screen look very, high res or something. I don't know the technical words for it, but I think that helps. So you can probably avoid using the blue light by using those kind of filters. That will help you for sure. But if you already have it, then see, if it is sinuses, then that's a completely different story altogether. But for dry eyes, what you can do is you can use mulethi. Mulethi is the Hindi word for licorice. Licorice is an English word for yashti madhu. Yashti madhu is the Sanskrit word for jethi mad. Jethi mad is a Gujarati word for jeshta mad, which is a Marathi word. So I have given you all the names in all the languages that I know. This is something that you get as a powder in almost all the chemists. Even the allopathic chemists will keep it. Make a paste of this by mixing it in water and apply it not just on the eyes, but on the entire socket. keep it for about 15-20 minutes and then wash it off. You will start finding that the dry eyes will go lesser. You will in fact start finding your tricolor vision starts improving. In fact, even if you have reddishness or yellowishness, your eyes will become bright white, and it will become very attractive and very bright. So yeah, you can do that. Again, if you want really detailed explanation for the eyes, I don't do ophthalmological cases, I don't treat much, so again I'm not the expert, but I do try to help as much as I can. Are oats healthy? In an overall sense, yes. Yeah, oats are good. I mean, I don't have any bone to pick with oats. They're pretty fine. I recommend oats to almost everyone, so no problem. What is the best diet for Amvat based problem? I think that's Amvat is what you mean. Amvat is a disease where Am basically means toxins caused due to indigestion, and Vata is the excess amount of gas that is secreted from this long-standing indigestion. So Amvat is a blood-based disease that spreads to the entire body. I am explaining what Amvat is for the people who don't know. Spreads to the entire body. The common symptoms is joint pain in the major big joints, so something like knee, hip, shoulder, the major joints. The pain starts, lower back. The pain starts, but there are certain key factors here. Number one, the pain is a moving pain. So today it's the right knee, tomorrow it's the left knee. Day after it's the lower back, then it's the neck, cervical. It's a moving pain. Second, the pain and the stiffness is extremely pronounced in the morning. Third, the area where the pain is normally swollen. It's reddish, and on touch it has a higher temperature than other parts of the body. Okay, so these are one of the characteristic examples of Amvat. Now, ensure you do have Amvat before you ask me the question, because if you don't, and if you have osteoarthritis, not rheumatoid arthritis or Amvat, then the treatment that I am going to tell you right now is actually going to worsen the condition. So ensure the diagnosis is right. I'm giving you a few pointers. Ask me on a one-to-one basis later if you need more information. If you have Amvat, then by simply digesting the indigestion in the body, you can clear the problem. So start having more of dry ginger powder, start having more of the garam masalas. Maybe you can make those kind of kadas like they used in Corona. Okay, so you can start using these kind of things. Start using things that increase your digestive fire. You can start using medicines and alcoholic preparations like Asava, Arishta. Okay, so these things will help you in Amvat. Also clearing the motions will help. Thank you very much. We'll try mulethi and licorice. My pleasure. Can til oil be used in cooking every day? Til oil for the heart, is it okay? So we've been using til oil for years now. It can be used every day. In fact, my household is an example for it. The best thing to have in the... Okay, what is the best first thing to have in the morning? Warm water or lemon warm water or something else? Just have regular water. I don't think you need to do something specific for that. Lemon water should not be consumed daily. I don't buy into this alkaline acidic argument completely. I know alkaline helps you, I'm not refuting it, but I'm saying I don't buy into it completely, because in Charak Samhita, which is the father of medicine in the world, but father of medicine in Ayurveda also, it said that anything that is alkaline should not be used for a long term, because in case if it is used for a long term, it causes problems, but in a short term it does help, right? So alkaline, when you use it for like maybe a couple of months, maybe 40-45 days, it will give you the benefit, and then you will extrapolate it and saying that you should use it every day. That's wrong. Alkaline things taken every day. A lot of people use these Kangen waters, right? And they think using alkaline helps you with your health every day. It will help you for the first couple of months, and then it doesn't really help you too much. So having too much alkalinity in the body, despite of what today's research, whether it's sponsored or not, I don't know, tells you, Ayurveda says it doesn't help in the long run. It does help in the short run though. Okay. How to incorporate flax seeds in the diet and what are the benefits? Flax seeds I probably stop for almost everyone who has a pitta problem. Flax seeds are very, very heaty. Okay, they increase tremendous amounts of heat in the body. So if you're suffering from anything that is minorly heat related, maybe a liver problem, maybe a pancreatic problem, maybe a spleen problem, maybe something like acidity, migraines, occipital headaches, hair falls, maybe lack of sleep, burning of the hands, burning of the palms, the soles, the feet, burning in the urine, burning micturition, burning of the eyes, hot flashes, anger, irritation, high blood pressure, then flax seeds have to be stopped. Cannot take it, should not take it. Okay. Fine. I think Sitaji is just writing a few W's. I think it's just her keyboard malfunctioning. Manisha ji is asking me, is fresh lemon juice and warm water and honey recommended as a first drink in the morning? Well, if you want to lose your hair very quickly, then I would recommend continuing this, because honey should never be heated or mixed in anything warm. So mixing honey and anything warm like warm water, or these days people that are mixing it in green tea, I love those patients, because they come to me with a hair fall and an acidity problem very, very soon. And anyone who's using this for a long term will come to me, also to someone else with this kind of a problem. Stop it immediately. If you want to use honey, use it with normal room temperature water, never with warm water. First of all, I don't recommend any of these things. Okay, just have normal water, have normal diet, basic food. Don't try and do things for weight loss that are shortcuts. If you really are interested in doing weight loss, then do something which is a long cut, which works in the long run, wherein you use a sustainable diet and exercise, and not some fad that you can do only for a couple of days or a couple of months. Okay, would you recommend whey protein as a supplement post heavy workouts as recommended by most fitness instructors? If not, then what do you recommend for protein? Okay, do you know what whey is? Let me tell you what whey is. When you take dahi and when you cut the surface of the dahi, you have this crystal clear water that comes in. That crystal clear water, dahi का पानी छूटता है, जिसको हम फेंक देते हैं, that is whey. So we throw whey out and we buy a 4,000-5,000 rupee whey protein. That's the reality for today's times. Okay, so if you actually want protein, I really recommend using protein in a natural sense rather than buying a dried up, even though natural, but a dried up, stale, powdered form of protein. Not that it's bad for you, but I just always recommend, and I really think it's better to use a protein that is much more fresh, much more organic, Till oil generates heat in the body, but still can we use it every day. Almost all oils that I know of generate heat. So, I mean, if you don't use till oil, you probably use another oil which would again generate heat in the body. The only oil that is very commonly used and doesn't generate heat in the body is coconut oil. So if you have people at home that are of a very pitta prakruti person, like the symptoms I told you just a while back for the flax seeds, all the acidity, XYZ, if there are a lot of people who have a pitta problem, then you can use coconut oil, that works. But if not, then I would really think till oil is your best bet. Alright, I think Instagram is going to cut me off now. I have really enjoyed being with you. Really intelligent, really smart questions coming in. I love these conversations. Otherwise, talking with patients, I think on a one-to-one basis, sometimes I get really dumb questions, sometimes I get really intelligent questions that even makes me think, and I learn a lot from all of you all. But when I do this with so many of you all together, I just get like a ton of intelligent questions that makes me run my mind, and sometimes I learn things that that come up when I think about these topics. So it's a great session. I really want to thank each and every one of you for removing your valuable time for this kind of a talk. Don't know if this adds any value, but if it does, then that's great. That's mission successful for me. I have one last question. Should we only eat home cooked food? Do you go out to restaurants? Not in the lockdown, I don't go out to restaurants. But yes, I did go out to restaurants. The problem with me personally, and that problem is with a lot of people here, is that I am an Ayurvedic doctor, but I am a Gujarati. And being a Gujarati, I am actually have this one gene that we call in medical science as a foodie gene. And this gene causes a lot of problems and a lot of contradictions to my diet and lifestyle. But I have an unfair advantage that I do figure things out and I do correct it. So anyways, see you next Sunday for the workshop. I'm going to be posting the link on Insta. I'm also going to be broadcasting on WhatsApp, on Facebook, on Twitter, on every other channel except YouTube. So be in touch, and I'll see you in the workshop next Sunday. Take care. Bye.